Minister, Shelter have today accused the Scottish Government of not taking the issue of homelessness seriously enough. Are they right?
No, I meet with Shelter on a regular basis. I've met with Shelter on probably a dozen times since I've been in post, so I would refute that, and I'll continue to meet Shelter to discuss.
But if you're meeting them and they're saying you're not taking it seriously enough, it's not about meetings. It's surely what comes out of these meetings.
Of course it is, and I think one of the important things, John, is the context that we're in. We've had our capital budget cut by 10%. And I think when you look at the impact of COVID, of Brexit, of cost of living, construction costs and so on, that's had an impact. I meet with Shelter and other stakeholders on a regular basis, and obviously look to work with them as closely as we possibly can. And I know you've got Jane Wood coming on later on, and I just met Jane, for example, a few times last week to talk about some of the issues that they've raised and work very closely with them. I meet with local authorities on a regular basis. But what we're hearing,
it's okay, you're maybe meeting with them, but what we're hearing is you're not listening and nothing is changing. For example, in the budget that's going through Parliament just now, the Scottish Government is proposing a £196 million cut from the affordable housing programme. That's not taking it seriously, is it?
John, that's the capital budget. That's a draft at the moment, and I think in the context of coming back to the capital cut that I talked about, it's not just ourselves that are saying that. The Welsh Government has said that this was the most difficult budget they've faced in the devolutionary era. So it's not just Scottish Government that's facing this problem. It's the Welsh Government, for example, as well. It's also the government cuts to public services in the UK, and we have the UK budget coming up, and there's a number of asks from myself. They should, restore the capital budget cut to ourselves. Local housing rates need to go back up to where they were in terms of that. So,
but these are choices. This is a devolved issue. These are choices you can make. We hear that the Fraser of Allender Institute, for example, says that the budget for the affordable housing in Scotland has been cut by more than a third in just 2 years. Again, is that taking it seriously?
Yeah, yes. I mean, again, it comes back to the context that we're in. We're facing a 10% capital cut. That equates to £1.4 billion. I'm not in the same position as a minister, a housing minister in any other country in Europe. They have the ability to go borrow more funds to try and build a house. But I don't have that luxury. I have to work with the capital that we're given by the UK government. They've cut that budget by 10%. We'll try to make that go.
If that is the position we're in, what can you offer homeless people? What can you say to them to give them any encouragement?
I think there's a number of important things, John, in terms of that. We build 40%, have done since 2007, 40% more head population than England and 70% more head population than Wales. And just in July this year, I met in Fife with the First Minister, and we discussed and mentioned about the acquisition policy, making £60 million forward to buy more properties. Now, that fund, we are in discussions obviously with key local authorities, and that fund will be spent. And we also talked around about allocation policies that push the homelessness people further up the line in terms of that. And I meet with Edinburgh and Glasgow and other local authorities on a regular basis to see what we can do. For example, around about empty homes, how can we assist them in dealing with that? Around about the allocations that we've talked about, the acquisitions funding that was announced last year has made a difference.
These are some of the things you're talking about, but 250,000 people are in social housing, on the social housing waiting list. How did it ever come to that?
I think that it's been over a number of years, and one of the key things that we've had to do.
But you've been in power for 15.
Yeah, over a number of years, and I think one of the key things, again, it comes back to the context around about the capital spending that we don't have. I would love to borrow more funds to go out and build more council houses. I don't have the luxury to do that.
As I repeat that, 250,000 people on the waiting list. You've been in power since 2007. I got my arithmetic wrong. That's actually what we're coming up for 16 and a half years. So,
John, I acknowledge that we are in a tricky position at the moment. But I think one of the key things is when you come back and talk about homelessness, there was a report out from about the homeless monitor, and this was by Heriot-Watt University. They mentioned the biggest barrier at the moment in reducing homelessness was in terms of the local housing allowance rates, which has been frozen for a number of years by the Conservative government. So, and they also mentioned about the cuts, for example, in welfare, which has made a big difference. We also mitigate £90 million a year on discretionary housing payments because of the two-child cap, because of the bedroom tax. Now, the UK government could raise that. An incoming Labour government could change that as well. That's another £100 million could go to that. Now,
the major problems then, as far as you're concerned, stem from the UK government. The fact that it's a devolved issue, and you've been in power since 2007, and we've got these problems. It's still the UK government to blame. Is that what you're saying?
No, John. I accept responsibility. We need to be building more houses. However, the capital budget cut of the 10%, it makes a major impact on that, and the level of local housing allowance makes a major impact on that. Even though it's a devolved issue, there are many issues that are still controlled. For example, around about our capital borrowing powers, around about local housing allowance rates, around about what we can do.
Okay.
These are still controlled by the UK government. Now, any UK government that comes in after this election, be it Conservative or Tory, there's a challenge: restore the capital budget cut, restore local housing rates to where they need to be. And if we've seen that, then obviously we'd be spending more money and give us borrowing powers to borrow more money to build more houses more quickly.
Very finally then, Minister, you saw the report and you saw the story of Kirsty. What hope can you offer her?
John, my background is 15 years as a councillor, and housing and homelessness was always the biggest issue we've had. Now, I'm glad that Edinburgh have picked it up in terms of that. In terms of when I was an East Lothian councillor, there was always points for health issues, and I'm glad Edinburgh have now picked it up. So she should be getting further up the line in terms of that. In terms of acquisition policies, that's allowing us to go out and build, to buy more houses as quickly as we possibly can. That policy, as I said, we're liaising with Edinburgh Council amongst others in terms of that. Now, if we buy these houses, they'll come forward as quickly as we can. And we're working in Edinburgh in terms of empty houses and allocations to try and bring as many houses into the system as we quickly can.
Paul McLennan, thanks for joining us in Scotland Tonight.